The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the Montana wilderness as Abigail Anderson stared in disbelief at the empty spot where her brother's horse had stood moments before. The year was 1885, and at 22 years old, she found herself completely alone in a vast, unforgiving land with nothing but the clothes on her back and her brother's final callous words ringing in her ears. "Fend for yourself, Abby. I've got gold waiting for me." She collapsed onto a fallen log, her emerald eyes welling with tears as she watched the distant dust cloud marking her brother's hasty departure fade into the horizon. They had journeyed west from Boston together after their parents' deaths, James promising they would build a new life in Helena. But when rumors of a gold strike in the Northern Territories reached them, something in her brother changed. The lure of quick wealth had transformed him, and now he had abandoned her to chase his fortune. The sun began its descent behind the jagged mountains, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and crimson. The beauty was lost on Abigail as panic began to set in. Night in these parts was dangerous. She had heard stories of wolves, bears, and outlaws who showed no mercy to travelers caught unprepared. She had no weapon, no food, and no idea which direction would lead to civilization. A rustling sound from the nearby thicket made her heart leap into her throat. She froze, straining her ears for any indication of what approached. The brush parted, and she prepared to scream when a man stepped into the small clearing. Tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered by sun and wind, he regarded her with piercing blue eyes beneath the brim of a well-worn Stetson. "Madam," he said, his voice deep and cautious, "you lost out here." Abigail could not decide if his appearance was providence or a new danger. He carried a rifle slung over one shoulder, and his clothes were dusty from the trail, but there was something in the way he kept a respectful distance that calmed her initial fear. "My brother," she managed, her voice cracking. "He left me, just left me here." The stranger's expression darkened. He scanned the surroundings, taking in the signs of her abandonment, then removed his hat, revealing dark blonde hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Name's Adam Irwin," he said. "I've got a camp set up about half a mile from here. Night's coming quick, and these woods ain't no place for anyone alone after dark." He extended a calloused hand toward her. "I'll guide you back to life, madam, if you'll trust me." Abigail hesitated only briefly before placing her gloved hand in his. What choice did she have? "Abigail Anderson," she replied, rising from the log on unsteady legs. Adam led her through the wilderness with the sure-footed confidence of someone who knew the land intimately. They walked in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "Your brother, he heading north, to the new strike?" Adam asked, helping her over a fallen tree. "Yes," she replied bitterly. "We were supposed to start a new life in Helena. Our parents died last winter and we sold everything to come west. Now he's..." Her voice broke as the reality of her situation crashed over her anew. "Some men lose their minds at the mention of gold," Adam said, his tone neutral but his eyes sympathetic when he glanced back at her. "Makes them forget what truly matters." They arrived at his camp just as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. It was a simple setup, a small tent, a carefully constructed fire pit with flames already dancing, and a sturdy-looking paint horse tethered nearby. The animal nickered softly as they approached. "That's Juniper," Adam said, nodding toward the horse. "She's particular about strangers, but she'll warm up to you." He gestured for Abigail to sit on a flat rock near the fire while he busied himself with some provisions from his saddlebags. She watched him, still wary but grateful for the warmth of the flames. "I don't have much," he apologized, handing her a tin cup of coffee and some dried meat with hardtack. "But it'll keep your strength up." "Thank you," she said, accepting the humble meal. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." Adam settled across from her, the firelight casting shadows across his features. "Where were you headed before your plans changed?" "Helena," she replied. "I have a letter of introduction to a dressmaker there. I'm skilled with a needle." She sipped the strong coffee, grimacing slightly at the bitter taste. "At least that was the plan. Still can be," Adam said. "I'm heading to Helena myself after I finish some business in these parts. I could escort you there." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Abigail asked, studying him carefully. Because leaving you out here would weigh on my conscience something fierce, he replied simply. And my ma raised me better than that. They fell into companionable silence, the crackling of the fire and the distant call of a night bird the only sounds. Abigail felt some of the tension leave her body as exhaustion took hold. Adam noticed her eyelids drooping and stood, retrieving a bedroll from his pack. You take the tent tonight, he said, laying the bedroll near the fire. I'll keep watch. I couldn't possibly, she began to protest. Miss Anderson, he interrupted gently, I insist. You've had enough trials today. Get some rest. Too tired to argue further, Abigail retreated to the small canvas tent. Despite her apprehension about trusting a stranger, something about Adam Irwin's quiet strength reassured her. As she drifted to sleep on the hard ground, she heard him softly speaking to his horse, the low rumble of his voice oddly comforting in the wilderness night. Morning broke with a chorus of birdsong and the smell of coffee brewing. Abigail emerged from the tent to find Adam already awake, tending to the small fire. He looked up at her approach, a slight smile softening his features. Sleep well, he asked, pouring her a cup of the fresh brew. Better than I expected, she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Her hair, usually neatly pinned, had mostly come loose during the night, and she felt self-conscious about her disheveled appearance. I've been thinking, Adam said, settling back on his heels. Helena's a good 5 days' ride from here. We'll need supplies and you'll need proper trail clothes. He gestured to her city attire, now wrinkled and stained from her ordeal. There's a trading post about half a day's ride south. We can get what we need there. Abigail nodded, relief washing over her at having a plan. I have some money, she said, reaching for the small purse still secured at her waist. Not much, but enough to pay for my share. Adam waved away her offer. We'll worry about that later. For now, let's focus on getting to the trading post. They broke camp efficiently, Adam packing his few belongings with practiced ease. When it came time to mount Juniper, Abigail stared at the horse with trepidation. Growing up in Boston, her experience with horses had been limited to occasional carriage rides. Adam seemed to sense her hesitation. Ever ridden before? He asked, leading Juniper closer. Not like this, she admitted. He nodded, understanding. I'll help you up. You'll ride in front where I can keep you secure. With his guidance, Abigail managed to settle in the saddle. Adam swung up behind her with fluid grace, careful to maintain a respectful distance despite the intimate arrangement. She felt the solid warmth of him at her back as he reached around to take the reins, and an unexpected flutter stirred in her chest. Ready? He asked, his breath tickling her ear. She nodded, not trusting her voice. With a gentle click of his tongue, Adam urged Juniper forward, and they set off through the dappled morning light of the forest. As they rode, Abigail learned that Adam was a former cavalry scout who now worked as a guide and occasional bounty hunter. He knew the Montana Territory better than most, having traversed it countless times over the past decade. What business brings you to these parts? She asked as they followed a narrow game trail. Tracking, he replied after a moment's hesitation. Man named Barton robbed a stagecoach last month. 3 people died. I aim to bring him in. Abigail tensed slightly. You're hunting a murderer alone. It's what I do, Adam said simply. But don't worry, trail's gone cold and I suspect he's headed north same as your brother. For now, getting you safely to Helena takes priority. By midday, the trees thinned and they emerged onto rolling grasslands. In the distance, smoke rose from what Adam identified as the trading post. The sight of even this small outpost of civilization lifted Abigail's spirits. The trading post was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch where several men lounged, watching their approach with idle curiosity. Adam helped Abigail dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. Her legs wobbled slightly after hours in the saddle. Stay close, he murmured as they approached the building. Not everyone here is friendly to strangers. Inside, the trading post was dimly lit and crowded with merchandise tools, clothing, preserved foods, and various sundries necessary for frontier living. The proprietor, a heavyset man with a bushy beard, greeted Adam with recognition. Irwin, didn't expect to see you round these parts again so soon. His gaze shifted to Abigail, curiosity evident in his expression. "Hank," Adam acknowledged, "we need supplies. And the lady requires proper riding clothes." Hank nodded, directing them to different sections of the store. While Adam gathered provisions, Abigail selected a simple split riding skirt, sturdy boots, and a cotton blouse, practical garments far removed from her fashionable Boston wardrobe. As she paid for her items, a gruff voice called from the doorway. "Well, look who it is, the famous scout." Adam turned slowly, his posture subtly shifting to a state of readiness that made Abigail instantly alert. 3 men had entered the trading post, their expressions unfriendly. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down one cheek, approached with deliberate steps. "Heard you were sniffing around after Barton," the man continued. "Awful loyal of you, considering what the law pays." "This doesn't concern you, Silas," Adam replied evenly. Silas grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Oh, but it does. Barton's crew doesn't take kindly to bounty hunters." His gaze slid to Abigail. "Found yourself some company, I see." Adam moved slightly, positioning himself between Abigail and the newcomers. "The lady is under my protection." "We're just passing through." Tension crackled in the air as Silas considered Adam's words. Finally, he stepped back with exaggerated courtesy. "Far be it from me to interfere with a man and his companion." The insinuation in his tone made Abigail flush with indignation. "We'll be seeing you around, Irwin," Silas added, backing toward the door. "Country's getting mighty small these days." After the men departed, Hank released a low whistle. "You've made some dangerous enemies, Adam." "Nothing new there," Adam replied, gathering their purchases. "We'll be moving on. Thanks for the supplies, Hank." Outside, Adam secured their new provisions to Juniper's saddle while Abigail changed into her riding clothes in a small back room Hank had offered. When she emerged, she felt both strange and liberated in the practical garments. "Those men," she said quietly as Adam helped her mount. "They're with the outlaw you're tracking." Adam swung up behind her before answering. "Associates of his, which means Barton might be closer than I thought." He urged Juniper forward, away from the trading post. "We'll need to be careful. Change our route a bit." They rode hard for the remainder of the day, putting distance between themselves and the trading post. Adam's body was tense against her back, his vigilance evident in the way he constantly scanned their surroundings. By evening, they reached a shallow river where Adam suggested they make camp. "Water will help cover our tracks," he explained as he helped her dismount. As they prepared their simple camp, Abigail found herself studying Adam more closely. Despite his dangerous profession, there was a gentleness to him she hadn't expected. The way he spoke soothingly to Juniper, how he ensured Abigail had the most comfortable spot by the fire, the respectful distance he maintained despite their forced proximity. "Tell me about your life before," she said as they shared a meal of beans and dried beef. "Before you became a scout and bounty hunter." Adam's expression grew distant. "Not much to tell. Grew up on a small ranch in Wyoming. Pa died when I was 14. Ma held on for a few more years." He poked at the fire with a stick. "Joined the cavalry at 18, learned to track to survive. After my discharge, I found I wasn't suited for much else." "No family of your own?" she asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. To her surprise, he answered, "Almost, once." His voice held a note of old pain. "Catherine was her name, daughter of an army colonel. We were to be married after my last deployment. Influenza took her while I was away." "I'm so sorry," Abigail said softly. Adam nodded his acknowledgement. "Life out here. It takes as often as it gives." His eyes met hers across the fire. "What about you? What awaits in Helena besides dressmaking?" Abigail smiled ruefully. "Nothing and no one. My parents had hopes of me making a good match in Boston, but I was too headstrong for most suitors' tastes. Then after they passed." She trailed off, the grief still fresh. "James was all I had left. I thought we would build something together out west." "Your brother made a fool's choice," Adam said firmly, "but perhaps it's a blessing in disguise. Man who'd abandon his sister for gold wouldn't be much help building a new life." His words, though harsh about her brother, held a truth that comforted her. They talked long into the evening, sharing stories of their pasts and aspirations for their futures. Abigail found herself laughing for the first time since her brother's betrayal, as Adam recounted some of his more amusing experiences as a scout. When they finally retired for the night, Adam again, insisting she take the tent while he slept under the stars, Abigail realized with a start that she felt safer with this near stranger than she had with her own brother in recent months. Dawn brought with it a fine mist that shrouded the landscape in ethereal beauty. Abigail awoke to find Adam already tending to Juniper, speaking to the horse in low, affectionate tones. She watched him unseen for a moment, struck by the contradiction of this man capable of tracking dangerous criminals, yet gentle with those under his care. They set out early, Adam explaining they would follow the river for several miles before cutting west toward Helena. The day passed in companionable conversation as Abigail grew more comfortable in the saddle. By afternoon, she no longer tensed when the horse navigated difficult terrain, trusting both Juniper's sure-footedness and Adam's skill. The third day of their journey brought unexpected challenges. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and by midday, thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. "Storm's coming fast," Adam observed, scanning the sky with concern. "We need shelter." They pushed on through increasingly heavy rain, Abigail shivering despite the oilskin coat Adam had draped around her shoulders. The downpour reduced visibility to mere yards, and Juniper grew skittish with each crack of thunder. "There," Adam shouted over the storm, pointing to a dark shape ahead. As they drew closer, Abigail made out the silhouette of a small cabin, apparently abandoned but still standing. They dismounted in the relative shelter of a lean-to attached to the cabin. Adam quickly led Juniper inside this crude stable, then guided Abigail to the cabin's door. It creaked open with some resistance, revealing a single-room dwelling long uninhabited but intact. "Trapper's cabin," Adam explained, striking a match to light a stub of candle he found on a rough-hewn table. "Abandoned, but it'll keep us dry." Abigail stood dripping in the center of the room, suddenly very aware of their isolation and proximity. Adam busied himself checking the small fireplace, clearing away cobwebs and debris before attempting to light a fire with the meager dry wood stacked beside it. "You're shivering," he noted, concern evident in his voice. "You need to get out of those wet clothes." He turned his back to her, focusing intently on the fledgling fire. "I'll keep my eyes to myself. There's a blanket in my pack that should be dry." Grateful for his consideration, Abigail quickly changed into her spare blouse, laying her wet garments near the now crackling fire. Wrapped in the rough wool blanket, she felt warmth slowly returning to her limbs. "You can turn around now," she said softly. Adam did so cautiously, relief visible on his face when he saw her properly covered. He removed his own sodden coat but kept the rest of his clothing, seemingly unbothered by the damp. The small cabin grew warm as the fire strengthened. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the single window and wind howling through the trees. Adam prepared a simple meal from their provisions, and they ate in silence broken only by the crackling fire and the storm's fury. "Will your brother make it through this weather?" Abigail asked suddenly, surprising herself with the concern she still felt despite his betrayal. Adam considered the question. If he found shelter, yes. The northern route has several mining camps where he might hole up. He studied her face in the firelight. "You still care for him, despite what he did." "He's my brother," she said simply. "The only family I have left. I'm angry, furious, even, but I don't wish him harm." "That speaks well of your character," Adam replied, his blue eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Not everyone could find such forgiveness." "Have you forgiven the man you're tracking?" she asked, curious about the boundaries of Adam's own capacity for mercy. His expression hardened slightly. "Some actions can't be forgiven. The people Barton killed had families, futures. Justice isn't about forgiveness, it's about setting things right as best we can." They fell silent again, each lost in thought as the storm raged on. The single room of the cabin suddenly felt very small, and Abigail became acutely aware of Adam's presence, the breadth of his shoulders, the strength evident in his hands, the way the firelight played across his features. "You should rest," he said eventually, breaking the silence. Take the bed. I'll keep watch. Abigail glanced at the narrow cot against the far wall. You haven't slept properly since we met. You need rest too. I'm accustomed to going without, he assured her. At least sit, she insisted, patting the floor beside her near the fire. You don't have to stand guard all night. After a moment's hesitation, Adam lowered himself to the floor, leaning back against the wall. They sat side by side, shoulders almost touching, watching the flames dance. Tell me about Helena, Abigail said, stifling a yawn. What can I expect? Adam described the growing city, its bustling streets, the mix of refined establishments and frontier roughness, the opportunities for someone with her skills. As he spoke, Abigail found her eyelids growing heavy, the combination of the fire's warmth and his deep voice lulling her toward sleep. She wasn't sure when exactly her head came to rest on his shoulder, only that she felt him tense briefly before relaxing, his arm carefully moving to support her. In the last moments before sleep claimed her, she felt the gentle pressure of his cheek resting against the top of her head, and a sense of peace washed over her, unlike anything she'd felt since leaving Boston. Morning arrived with clearing skies and birdsong. Abigail woke to find herself still beside the fire, now banked to embers with Adam's blanket tucked around her. He was nowhere to be seen inside the cabin. She rose, stretching muscles stiff from sleeping upright, and went to the door. Outside, Adam was tending to Juniper, his back to the cabin. The morning light caught in his hair, turning it golden at the edges. Something had shifted between them during the night, a boundary crossed, perhaps, or a trust deepened. Abigail found herself watching the movement of his shoulders as he brushed Juniper's coat, an unfamiliar warmth blooming in her chest. He must have sensed her presence, for he turned, his expression softening when he saw her. Morning, he called. Storms past, should be good traveling today. They prepared for departure with practiced efficiency, now familiar with each other's rhythms. As Adam helped her mount Juniper, their eyes met briefly, and Abigail felt a flutter of something that both excited and frightened her. The day's journey took them through verdant valleys and across sparkling streams swollen from the previous night's rain. Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the land they traversed. By afternoon, Abigail realized he was deliberately taking a circuitous route. "Are we avoiding something?" she asked during a brief rest to water Juniper. Adam nodded, his expression guarded. "Those men at the trading post. I'm not convinced they've given up. This route is longer but safer." Concern flickered across Abigail's face. "You're delaying your hunt for Barton because of me." "Some things take priority," he replied simply, helping her back into the saddle. They made camp that evening in a sheltered hollow. As they sat by the fire, Abigail found herself studying Adam's profile, wondering at the circumstances that had brought this honorable man into her life just when she needed him most. "Why do you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Risk your life hunting dangerous men." Adam was silent for a long moment. "Started as a way to make use of my tracking skills after the cavalry," he finally replied. "But now, I've seen what men like Barton do to innocent folks. Someone has to stand against that." "It's a lonely life," she observed softly. His eyes met hers across the flames. "Yes," he acknowledged. "It is." The silence that followed held a weight of unspoken possibilities. Abigail felt herself drawn to him in a way that transcended gratitude or circumstance, something fundamental and powerful that both thrilled and terrified her. "What will you do after Helena?" Adam asked, breaking the charged silence. "I hadn't thought beyond establishing myself there," she admitted. "Find work with the dressmaker, perhaps save enough to open my own shop someday." She hesitated, then added, "And you, after Barton?" "There's always another outlaw," he said with a hint of resignation. "But lately I've been thinking about that ranch in Wyoming. It's still there, overgrown but standing. Sometimes I wonder." "If you could go back," she finished when he trailed off. "If I should," he corrected gently. "A man gets used to the trail, to being alone. Not sure I remember how to be anything else." Abigail found herself reaching across the space between them, her hand covering his. "I think you remember more than you realize." His fingers curled around hers, warm and strong, and for a moment, they simply existed in the connection, the night sounds of the wilderness enveloping them. The next morning brought a change in their journey. Adam spotted fresh tracks crossing their path, several horses heading west. "Barton's men," he said grimly after examining the hoofprints. "They're between us and Helena." Abigail felt a chill of fear. "What do we do?" "Change course," Adam decided, helping her mount. "We'll head south, then circle back. Add a day to our journey, but safer." They rode cautiously, Adam's vigilance evident in his tense posture and frequent stops to check their surroundings. By midday, they had reached a high ridge that offered a commanding view of the rolling landscape below. Adam reined in Juniper, studying the terrain with narrowed eyes. "There," he said, pointing to a dust cloud in the distance. "Riders, moving fast." Abigail strained to see. "Is it them?" "Can't be sure," he replied, "but we should assume so." He turned Juniper toward a steep path leading down the ridge's far side. "This way, we'll lose them in the ravine." The descent was treacherous, Juniper picking her way carefully over loose stones and exposed roots. Abigail clung to the saddle horn, trusting Adam's guidance as they navigated the difficult terrain. They had nearly reached the bottom when disaster struck. A stone gave way beneath Juniper's hoof, causing the horse to stumble. Adam reacted instantly, one arm wrapping protectively around Abigail as he fought to control their descent. They slid the final yards, coming to an abrupt halt at the ravine floor. "Are you hurt?" Adam asked urgently, his arm still secure around her waist. "No," Abigail gasped, heart pounding from the near fall. "I'm fine." Adam dismounted quickly, checking Juniper for injury. The horse had suffered a slight strain but could still travel. As he helped Abigail down, the sound of distant voices reached them. "They're following our trail," Adam said, his expression grim. "We need to move quickly." They led Juniper through the dense undergrowth of the ravine, moving as silently as possible. The voices grew louder, joined by the sound of horses navigating the slope they had just descended. "There's a cave system ahead," Adam whispered, pointing to a rocky outcropping. "We can hide there until they pass." The cave entrance was partially concealed by fallen rocks and vegetation. Adam led Juniper inside first, then guided Abigail into the cool darkness. They moved deeper into the cave, beyond the reach of daylight, until Adam was satisfied they were well hidden. "Stay here," he instructed, his voice barely audible. "I'll watch the entrance." Abigail nodded, though he likely couldn't see the gesture in the dimness. She felt her way to a smooth rock and sat, listening to the muffled sounds of Adam moving back toward the cave mouth. Time passed with excruciating slowness. The distant voices grew closer, then seemed to stop near the cave entrance. Abigail held her breath, straining to hear. Suddenly, a shout echoed from outside. They had been discovered. The sharp crack of a gunshot followed, then another. Abigail froze in terror, unable to see what was happening. "Adam," she called, fear for him overriding caution. Footsteps pounded toward her through the darkness. She tensed, preparing to defend herself when Adam's voice reached her. "It's me," he said breathlessly. "They found our tracks. We need to go deeper." He took her hand, leading her further into the cave system. Behind them, voices echoed as their pursuers entered the cave. "There's another way out," Adam explained as they navigated by touch through the darkness. "I explored these caves years ago, tracking a fugitive." They moved as quickly as they dared, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter as the cave passages twisted and branched. After what seemed an eternity, a faint glimmer of light appeared ahead, a small opening in the cave wall. "It's tight," Adam warned as they approached the exit. "But we can make it through." The opening led to a narrow ledge overlooking a steep drop to a river below. Adam helped Abigail through first, then followed, grimacing as the rough stones scraped his shoulders. "Where's Juniper?" Abigail asked, suddenly realizing the horse wasn't with them. "I sent her running before they arrived," Adam explained. "She'll head for open country. Horses are smarter than most give them credit for." His expression turned grim. "But we're on foot now and they're still behind us." They followed the ledge until it widened enough to walk more comfortably. The river below roared through a narrow canyon, its waters churning white over submerged rocks. "We need to cross," Adam said, pointing to where the canyon widened downstream. "There's a place where the river's shallow enough to ford." They had nearly reached the fording point when a shout from behind alerted them that they'd been spotted. A rifle shot ricocheted off the rocks near Abigail's feet, making her cry out in alarm. Adam pulled her behind a large boulder, drawing his revolver. "Stay down," he ordered, then fired 2 shots toward their pursuers, forcing them to take cover. "We're outnumbered," he said grimly. "Our only chance is to cross the river and lose them in the forest beyond." The fording point was still 50 yards ahead, 50 yards of exposed terrain with little cover. Adam studied their surroundings, then pointed to a series of boulders leading toward the river. "We'll go from rock to rock," he said. "When I give the word, run to the first boulder. Don't stop until you reach it." Abigail nodded, gathering her courage. When Adam signaled, she ran, heart pounding as a bullet struck the ground beside her. She reached the first boulder safely, pressing her back against it as Adam provided covering fire. They leapfrogged from cover to cover, drawing closer to the river with each desperate dash. Adam was right behind her as she reached the final boulder before the water's edge. "Almost there," he encouraged. "The crossing's just ahead." As Abigail prepared for the final sprint, a shot rang out and Adam grunted in pain. She turned to see him clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. "Adam," she cried, moving toward him. "I'm all right," he insisted, though his face had paled. "Keep going, I'll be right behind you." Torn between following his instruction and staying to help, Abigail made her decision. She tore a strip from her petticoat and pressed it against his wound. "We go together," she said firmly. Supporting some of his weight, she helped him to the river's edge. The water was swift but relatively shallow, with stepping stones visible above the surface. They began crossing, Adam wincing with each step but moving steadily. Behind them, their pursuers had reached the shore. Bullets splashed into the water around them as they navigated the treacherous crossing. Halfway across, Adam stumbled, nearly falling into the churning water. Abigail's grip on him tightened, her strength surprising them both as she kept him upright. "Almost there," she encouraged, echoing his earlier words. "Just a few more steps." They reached the far bank, scrambling up the muddy slope as bullets continued to fly around them. The dense forest offered immediate cover, and they plunged into its protective embrace, putting distance between themselves and the river. They continued moving for nearly an hour, Adam leaning increasingly on Abigail as blood loss weakened him. Finally, in a small clearing sheltered by towering pines, he sank to the ground. "Need to rest," he gasped, his face alarmingly pale. Abigail knelt beside him, gently lifting his shirt to examine the wound. The bullet had carved a deep furrow along his ribs, painful and bleeding freely, but not immediately life-threatening if she could stop the bleeding. Using more strips torn from her petticoat, she cleaned and bound the wound as best she could. Adam watched her work, his blue eyes fever bright. "You're quite something, Abigail Anderson," he murmured. "As are you, Adam Irwin," she replied, securing the makeshift bandage. "Though I'd prefer you without bullet holes." A ghost of a smile crossed his face before pain drew his features tight again. "They'll be tracking us," he warned. "We need to keep moving, after you rest," she insisted. "You've lost blood, a short rest won't hurt." He relented, closing his eyes briefly. Abigail kept watch, listening for any sign of pursuit, but the forest remained quiet except for natural sounds: birdsong, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant murmur of the river. When Adam insisted he was strong enough to continue, Abigail helped him to his feet. They moved more slowly now, Adam setting their course through the wilderness with unerring instinct despite his injury. By nightfall, they had put considerable distance between themselves and their pursuers. In a small hollow protected by dense undergrowth, they made a meager camp, no fire, for fear of giving away their position. Abigail checked Adam's wound in the fading light, relieved to find the bleeding had mostly stopped. As night settled fully around them, the temperature dropped, and she moved closer to him for warmth. "Why are you doing this?" Adam asked quietly in the darkness. "You could have run ahead, saved yourself." "The same reason you delayed your hunt for Barton to help me," she replied simply. "Some things take priority." She felt his hand find hers in the darkness, their fingers intertwining. "Abigail," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," she prompted when he fell silent. "If we make it through this, when we reach Helena." He hesitated, seeming to search for words. "I'm not sure I want to say goodbye," her heart quickened at his admission. "Then don't," she whispered. In the darkness, she felt him shift closer, his breath warm against her cheek. When his lips found hers, the kiss was gentle, questioning. Abigail responded with a certainty that surprised them both, her hand rising to cup his face. When they parted, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected to find you," he murmured. "Nor I you," she replied. "Especially not after being abandoned in the wilderness." "Your brother's foolishness was my good fortune," Adam said, his arm drawing her closer against the night's chill. They slept in brief intervals, taking turns keeping watch. By dawn, Adam's fever had broken, and he moved with greater ease as they continued their journey. The remaining 2 days of travel passed without incident. They found Juniper grazing peacefully in a meadow, seemingly waiting for them, and Abigail laughed with joy at the reunion. With the horse, they made better time, reaching the outskirts of Helena as the sun set on the 5th day since Adam had found Abigail alone in the wilderness. Helena spread before them, a bustling frontier city nestled against the mountains. Lights twinkled in windows, and the sounds of civilization wagon wheels on cobblestones, distant piano music from saloons. The general murmur of humanity reached them as they paused on a ridge overlooking the town. "We made it," Abigail said, a mixture of triumph and uncertainty in her voice. After their days in the wilderness, the prospect of returning to society seemed almost daunting. Adam's arm tightened around her waist. "You'll find your place here," he assured her. "The dressmaker will be lucky to have someone with your skills." "And you?" she asked, turning to face him. "What will you do now?" He studied her face in the fading light, his expression serious. "First, I'll see you safely settled. Then I have unfinished business with Barton." Seeing her concern, he added, "But after that, I've been thinking about that ranch in Wyoming." "Have you?" she asked, her heartbeat quickening. "A man shouldn't be alone forever," he said quietly. "And a ranch needs a woman's touch to truly be a home." Abigail's breath caught at the implication. "Are you asking me something, Adam Irwin?" "Not yet," he replied with a small smile, "but soon. When Barton's face justice and I can offer you more than a bounty hunter's uncertain life." His hand found hers. "If you'd be willing to wait." Abigail considered his words, then nodded decisively. "I'll wait, but on one condition." "Name it," he said. "Come back to me," she said simply. "No matter what." Adam's expression softened as he drew her close. "That, Abigail Anderson, is the easiest promise I've ever made." As they rode into Helena together, Abigail reflected on the strange twist of fate that had turned her brother's betrayal into the beginning of something precious. The wilderness that had nearly claimed her life had instead given her a new one and a man whose quiet strength and unwavering honor had captured her heart. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Abigail stood on the porch of a modest ranch house in Wyoming, watching a rider approach. Adam had kept his promise, returning to her after bringing Barton to justice. Their wedding had been simple but joyful, attended by the few friends they'd made in Helena and officiated by a traveling preacher. The ranch was coming back to life under their care, fields cleared, fences mended, cattle grazing on the hillsides. Inside the house, Abigail had created a home, her skills with needle and thread transforming the once neglected dwelling into a place of comfort and beauty. As Adam dismounted and strode toward her, his face lighting with the same smile that still made her heart skip, Abigail silently thanked the twist of fate that had left her alone in the wilderness that day. What had seemed like abandonment had been the beginning of her true life. "Welcome home," she called, stepping into the circle of his arms. "Best words in the English language," Adam replied, holding her close. Together they stood on the threshold of the home they were building, the past behind them and a future stretching bright and full of promise before them.